Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Eric Landau, Brooklyn, New York, and I am one of the co-chairs for the City Parks Alliance peer-to-peer group for nonprofit park operators. I'm joined today by my co-chair, Lesley Hoffarth. Lesley, I'm going to introduce in just a couple of minutes. Before I do, let me first, I don't think he's on the call with us yet, though I suspect he might be joining, but I want to thank Jesse Brackenberry. Jesse, as you may know, was my co-chair of this group last year. And Jesse is the executive director of the Rose Kennedy Greenway in Boston, where he actually will soon be departing, come back to New York to be the CEO of the New York Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. Jesse is also a board member of the City Parks Alliance, so I'm sure he will continue to stay heavily involved in his new role. But I just want to thank him for being my partner in this last year, and thank Lesley for being my partner in it this year. This peer-to-peer group is really focused on bringing together all of us nonprofit park operators to talk through whatever are the big issues that we're dealing with, where sharing information, bouncing ideas off of one another would be beneficial to all. We've had conversations about park stewardship and equity and fundraising. And obviously today we're going to be talking about how we can use this moment, this heightened moment of park demand to create an opportunity to do more things, whether that's advocacy related or fundraising related, while at the same time figuring out how we are opening for the coming season where people will be so needing their park spaces and how to do so safely. And Lesley's going to talk a little bit about what they're doing in St. Louis. And then hopefully the rest of you will also share what you're doing or ask questions that you're grappling with, so that, again, the real point of this is to kind of have some best practice sharing. And I know over the last year, I've certainly gotten ideas from this group about things that we can do here in Brooklyn Bridge Park that we had never thought of. And again, that's the whole point. The City Parks Alliance is obviously committed to finding ways now and in the future to enable peer learning between and among park groups around the country. And again, we really want this to be a conversation for all of you. Today's peer-to-peer conversation is made possible with the support from the Knight Foundation. And again, the topic is on how to capitalize on park demand after COVID while springing open safely. So, we think the conversation could certainly revolve around, is there a moment here for increased advocacy of parks, fundraising for those groups that rely so heavily on philanthropic giving, on park stewardship, which obviously is broadly defined, not just fundraising, but also in terms of volunteer stewardship. I think what's been so interesting during this time is that we've always known that parks are essential to all areas and for all people. But during the pandemic, those that weren't in the know, like the rest of us, I think they have all come to agree that parks are essential. And yet still in cities across the country, we're constantly fighting for appropriate resources and appropriate recognition, and even as related here in New York to appropriate prioritization of vaccines for our staff who keep parks safe and open was a challenge. And so is there a moment here? Is there an opportunity here to use this to really get everybody to agree, not only that parks are essential, but that you then have to follow that through with appropriate funding and support and stewardship. And so we hope today's conversation will give some insight into that we can all use. Some quick tech reminders that the folks at CPA would like me to remind you before we start. Please, you'll need to unmute your audio in order to speak. The microphone icon is on the bottom of the screen, farthest to the left. Click it to mute and unmute yourself. When you aren't speaking, we ask that you please mute yourself in order to minimize background noise. Please consider, if you haven't already, please consider turning on your webcam, as it will be a much richer conversation if we can all see each other. The camera icon is located next to the microphone. Given our large group, please plan to join the conversation by raising your hand. You can raise your hand in the Zoom by clicking on the reaction icon on the bottom right hand of your screen and then clicking on raise hand. You can also type your question into the chat box, and Karen will be monitoring that and incorporate those comments into the discussion, or Lesley or I will. If you're having technical difficulties at any point, please send a message through the chat function so that we can help resolve that as well. And as a reminder, today's call is being recorded. We just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. We've got a little over 30 people on our call, which is great, and we're expecting more to join us. And so due to the large size of the group today, sadly, we only have an hour. So, while we would love to go around and have everybody introduce themselves, because we're a little bigger, we're gonna skip that. But instead, when you are speaking or you're asking a question, if you would, whether it's verbally or in the chat, use that as an opportunity to also introduce yourself and your organization. With that, I do want to turn it over to Lesley. Lesley Hoffarth is, in addition to being our co-chair for this group, is the president and executive director at Forest Park Forever in St. Louis, Missouri. She's been in that role since 2010. In 2011, Lesley successfully negotiated a first-in-the-nation innovative agreement with the city of St. Louis that forms a true partnership in caring for Forest Park Forever, secures city funding for ongoing park maintenance, and builds the next phase of the capital project. Between 2013 and 2017, Lesley and her team undertook Forever, the campaign for Forest Park's future, which was the most ambitious fundraising initiative in Forest Park history. The Conservancy met and exceeded its $130 million goal, raising more than $139 million in gifts and pledges for the park. So again, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Lesley. I'm really excited to be working with you this year on this group, and going to turn it over to you to talk about what you're doing and how you're opening safely for the spring.
All right, thank you, Eric. I am really excited to be co-hosting with you this year, and I'm excited to be on the call with everyone. It's great to see so many people here. Yeah, so when the pandemic hit about a year ago, we really imagined that it was going to be a tough year fundraising wise. So I'm going to focus my time on what we did to try to capitalize on the people that we knew would be coming to the park, and then I'm going to shift to some things that we have on tap for this year and some things that our partners in St. Louis are doing. One of our biggest concerns last year, and I'm sure you all had this too, was donors would probably be shifting their dollars from giving to us to giving to some more immediately critical needs for the park. So we really wanted to think through, how do we move visitors from just being visitors to really being fans of the park and the organization, and then move them to being donors. We just wanted to make sure that we thought about what's the right time to jump in and ask people for support. We didn't want to do it too early in the pandemic because we wanted to make sure that we were being thoughtful of those organizations that really needed that immediate help. So I am going to pop up a few slides to illustrate some of the things that we did, and then we'll move on to what we have planned for this year. So let me just see if I can find the right slide here. See, this is what happened. Hang on. Let's see if we can get there. Okay. Okay, so can you all see that?
No, did you click to share your screen already?
I did. Hang on. Try it again. Okay. All right. How about now?
Yep, it's there.
Great. Okay. So I am just going to flip through really fast. So here's Forest Park. And it's a 1,300 acre park that sees a lot of visitors every year, especially to this part of the park. It's a very event-centric space. So we wanted to think about how can we start building a fan base from the very beginning. Early in the pandemic, there were most people were staying home. So we wanted to start growing kind of an online audience with inviting them into the park virtually. So we had a series of posts and things online that they could connect with, such as the sounds of Forest Park, just listening to the sounds of our nature reserve or different areas. We had blog posts and Instagram live feeds where we were walking through the park, just showing people what they would see if they were there. So we were starting to get some online chatter, and we were gathering input, just quotes that people gave us on just how important the park was to them. And then as we went on through the year, we started feeding that back to them with additional online content that was sharing with them the things that we were hearing from people. It was a really great way for people to interact and feel connected with the park, and to feel connected from other people. So then once we started gathering this great base of comments that we were hearing from people, our next phase was for those quotes to show up in the park. So this would have been fall by this point. We were continuing with the online engagement, but many of the quotes that people gave us, we put them on signs in the park, huge ones. So the one on the right, that's Art Hill again, that was in the first picture. Some smaller ones, and this was our first invitation to donate. Up until this point, it was just interaction. So we asked them to donate, gave them several ways that they could do that, QR codes and the website numbers that they could call. And there was also an online component. And then the next piece of this, it really just ended up being our year-long, our month-long end-of-year campaign. So with the quotes that we had, we took one of them, Hope and Happiness, early quote that we got, and we made that into our fundraising campaign for the year. So I'm going to take that down now, I think. All right, so how do I stop sharing? Unshare. Okay. Stop share. Okay, that's gone. So we ended that campaign with a month-long campaign in December that had TV, radio, billboards, and it all just kind of built on this idea of hope and happiness, and giving people the opportunity to share why the park was important to them. So as we worked our way through the year, we grew our audience, and it really paid off. By the end of the year, we had gained an additional 1,000 new donors to Forest Park Forever. Most of these were smaller donors, but we were so excited that we were able to engage people and kind of move them through that continuum of getting to know us, and then coming back for a second date. And then, you know, we asked them to help us out. So we're hoping that this year we can build on that, and we'll want to make sure we keep them in the pipeline. It takes a lot of work to get new donors on board, so we definitely want to keep them engaged and keep them coming back for more. So I'm going to touch on just a few of the things that we are planning on doing this year, and some of our partners. So events are starting to come back, COVID guidelines in place, and we know there's going to be a really dynamic rollout as we go through the year, as vaccinations are more available, mask debates are going to continue, and then some of those restrictions are going to start loosening up. So we're going to need to continue working our way through that. So one of the things that we're going to try this year is just doing some different pop-ups around the park to activate some of our lesser used parts of the park, some small gatherings, maybe a few food trucks, activities that we can partner with others on, such as well, you can ask about details on that, but just some things that we're thinking about to partner with others. And then it's an opportunity for community engagement for us to continue building our brand awareness for who we are and our role in helping to take care of the park. The St. Louis Symphony Orchestra is considering some small events on Art Hill this summer. early summer, and then in the fall, they typically do a concert that draws a lot of people to the park. There's an event that is being planned for the fall. It's called a Requiem, and it's really kind of a solemn social distanced event around the Grand Basin. And it's a way to just commemorate with the community the tough year that we've gone through, year and a half by then, and to recognize all the people that have lost their lives in the battle with COVID. And the park just seems a really fitting place to do that because it is the center for the community. And then I did want to also just mention our friends that are on the call with us today with the Gateway Arch Park Foundation. Amanda Goldsmith is on the call, as well as Ryan McClure, the executive director. But they're doing this Picnic in Your Park event in June, and you buy a picnic dinner, or you can bring your own, spread out on the grounds, and it's just a way for the whole community to come together and to celebrate, have that kind of solidarity between what we've all been through together, and do it in a really beautiful space like the Arch. So I think that's it for me.
Great, Lesley. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really great stuff. So it sounds like you had a big increase in the number of donors. Did that also result in continuing at least the amount of donations you had before? Like, what was the revenue impact?
We had we really ended the year pretty strong, and we're so fortunate for that. We really thought it could be a bad year. So we ended less than what our budget was in January of last year, but we cut our budget quite a bit, thinking that donations wouldn't come in. We ended up just slightly below what our budget in January was. So we did surpass what our reduced budget was when we reforecasted. A lot of new donors and a lot of returning donors. Our higher end donors, so those that gave $2,500 or more, most of them came back, and many of them came back at higher levels than expected. The lower level donors did really well too, and then, like I said, we gained a lot. That middle pack, so by middle pack, I mean those that it's our leadership donors, but they give it $1,000 up to the $2,500 mark. That was our toughest group. We didn't have as high a retention there, and we're thinking possibly we've really been pushing the last few years to grow our Leffingwell Society, that $1,000 leadership giving society. And many of those members have only been with us from 1 to 3 years. And we really think it's just that lack of longevity. They're newer, they're not as invested in the organization.
Thank you. So I'm going to open it up to questions from all of you for Lesley. So we can, if anybody wants some more details, as Eric said before, there's you can raise your hand and I can call on you. There's at the bottom, if you have the newer version of Zoom, there's a button that says reaction. And if you click on that, there should be an option to raise your hand. If you have the older version of Zoom, you can click on participants. And at the bottom, there's an option there to raise your hand. The other way you can participate is to put your questions in the chat, and I'll pull those up. And Peter, you had a great question in the chat and you got your hand up, so go for it.
Okay, it's the same question. I didn't know if I did it right or not. Hi, Lesley, Peter Harnick. So for those of you who are younger, or I'm like the old guard, I guess. I used to run the Center for City Park Excellence at the Trust for Public Land. I retired a few years ago, and I've been working on some park issues in Washington, D.C., particularly in relation to cars in the park. Lesley, did you close any of your car roads to reduce traffic in the park and to give people more space to recreate and socially distance recreate?
We did, and first of all, Peter, I don't know that we've ever met, but you are a legend, and I was excited.
As are you.
And you taught me how to raise my hand before everybody else got on the call too. So, It's a great question, though. We did close some roads in the park, and I will have to say, having City Parks Alliance as a forum has been really helpful, because we were, weekly checking in what are other people doing around the country, and we did see that a lot of other places were closing parks to leave room for walking. So we worked with the City Parks Department and did the same. We have changed where those road closures are as we went through the year. The first closures were around Art Hill, that first image that I showed of the park. That's the most iconic spot of the park. People want to be there. We also have cultural institutions like the Art Museum that was at the top of the hill. So early in the pandemic, that was a great place to walk and have the roads closed. When cultural institutions started opening up, we needed to adjust the plan because people needed access to those spots. So we closed some different roads on the eastern side of the park around Central Fields, our big sports and event space. Kept one other one closed on the west side. They're still closed, actually. Huge support for closing the roads. It was so nice to see them full of people walking and biking. Some people a little not happy with it. Bicyclists were not happy at first, but we were able to get the city to make some spaces for the bikes to ride through. It's time to open them up because we do have more events coming online, and we're going to need the circulation and the access. But I have talked with the Parks Department. This has shown us that we can close roads. For years, we've had people wanting us to do it, and we've always said we have all these other things going on, and we can't do it. But I think it's shown us that we can, and we can have that balance. So I did ask the Parks Department, can we sit down and talk through what a plan might look like once sporting events and cultural events come back online, so that on a regular basis we can have closures that people can plan on, but it's not impacting other things. Parks Director is very interested in that too. So I think we're going to figure out a way to make that happen. A park that's done that really well in St. Louis is Tower Grove Park. And I'm not sure if we have anyone from Tower Grove Park on the call today, but they instituted last fall, they had a set schedule that there were certain roads, a map that showed the closed roads on a certain schedule, like Tuesdays and Thursdays for the month of September and October, something like that. So people could plan on it. And then when the roads aren't closed to cars, they can then be able to access picnic pavilions, for example, that are a revenue generator. So it was a really great balance, I thought, for Tower Grove Park, to figure out how to address people that want to be able to have more space and walk, and the need to have access for cars to get to spaces in the park, especially those that are generating revenue. And that if that's a big piece of your revenue, it's really important that you find that balance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Lesley? Well, I would love to turn it over to all of you and have an opportunity for you all to share a little bit of how you're handling this. There's a bunch of different things that are all kind of wrapped up in here. One is around just opening safely. And we had a lot of questions in advance of the session here, with people struggling with how do we open safely? How do we really expand programming offerings and deal with the larger crowds that are coming in and manage that in a safe way? We had a lot of questions. People wanted to talk about developing inclusive programming and how to think about inclusive outreach, which I thought was a great point. A lot of questions and comments around balancing fee-based programs because there's a strong need to generate revenue with wanting to get as many free programs out there as possible to serve the great needs that's there. And then just leveraging all of that and the interest in parks right now for increased donor base, increasing your donor base the way Lesley has done so well. So why don't we start with the safety issue? Does anybody have other examples of the approaches that they're taking this spring with the large crowds that you've got coming, and thinking about how to do your programming, expand programming, and deal with those crowds in a safe way?
Well, I'll just throw out, just to get the conversation started, The city of St. Louis still has pretty strict restrictions on numbers of people that can be at events. And what they are doing, they started doing this last fall, is when permits are issued, those are the rules that you need to live by, even if guidance has, restrictions have eased. You need to plan your event and have your permit approved based on what the conditions are at the time, just so that you're not having all of those last minute surprises. So that could be something that could be helpful in just trying to meter the amount of people that are coming for any particular thing.
Any other examples of how people are handling the safety issue this spring and the larger crowds?
This is Rhonda from Laurel Hill, Friends of Laurel Hill and West Laurel Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And we last year had to cancel our cinema series, which could be anywhere from 800 to 1,000 people. Right now we're actually moving the screen, so it's in a different location of the cemetery, and limiting it to 200. But I think one of the things that we're going to do too is stagger the entrance time as well. People can spread out, they can sit on, their blankets and things like that. And the other thing too that we're trying to do is a 5K, but that's not until October. And again, we are looking at 200 people, but I think what we're going to do is stagger it again. So not all 200 people are coming in at the same time. People can feel comfortable. We can do that through tickets on our database and things like that, I think. But everything that we normally do is so much bigger, but we're just having to like shrink it and stay within the confines of, yes, 200 people. And like you said, it's like we have to plan on what the conditions are right now and what we're dealing with. And everybody that's hiring me is like, no, but it's going to be better at this time. It's like, yeah, but this is what we know now, kind of thing too. If it is better, great. But our tours are still 15 people to a tour. They used to be 25 to 30. And we have to have staff people on those tours now too, to ensure that everybody is complying. So that's kind of the other safety issue too. Obviously, we're cleaning bathrooms and doing that kind of thing as well. But definitely cutting back and trying to stagger times.
I'd love to jump in on that, Rhonda, and I'm so glad you brought up the movie series, because as we are approaching the summer, certainly for us, and I imagine for a lot of parks, a summer movie series is a big piece of summer programming, and it's really something that we are grappling with. Our movies in the summer get anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 people, and the current protocols for outdoor events are 200 people. You can increase that number to 500 people if everyone that comes in shows proof of full vaccination or a negative COVID test. Even at the 500 person, again, we're used to having 5,000 or more people at our movies on a fairly sizable lawn in the park. And it's a free program series. And so what we're grappling with is, if we do the 200 or even just the 500, this is a program that is so popular. How do you turn people away without giving the feel that all of a sudden you've privatized public space? Mm-hmm. And we don't know what the answer is on that yet, because we would feel really remiss not to have some sort of summer movie program this summer, but we really struggle with this idea of having such a small program, especially when it's been so popular, and how you tell the rest of the public that they can't use public space.
Yeah, and you're bringing up a great point, Eric, about fee-based programs versus free programs, and how do you manage crowds and expectations for that? So how are other people approaching this?
This is Caroline with Shelby Farms Park in Memphis. So we have a lot of space. We have 4,500 acres. And so we have just a little bit, we have a little bit more room than maybe some of you guys. But the movie piece, we started doing some drive-in movies that allowed for us to be able to have, you could not have thousands of people, because cars take up a whole lot of space, and it was a whole lot of mapping to be able to make that happen. But that was interesting and popular. We had to scrap most of our free programming other than the walking trails and the general park amenities. And we focused on, we didn't completely close our indoor spaces, but mostly, and we've had guidance from our health department that as long as everyone stays masks and there's room for social distance, and you encourage everybody for social distancing, that we have been having 50 people events outside on our boats and at our pavilions. That has been, it's a lot of little events, but it's been a huge injection of revenue for the park. And it's also been really, really encouraging for staff and volunteers to be able to see real humans in real life enjoying the park, and just seeing people get so excited about being in the park space. Some of the spaces most of the spaces we close at sunset, and so we opened up some of those spaces for some of these for these programs. And so that's been helpful, personally, emotionally, as well as for the public. And we just tried to keep that. We struggle with that the privatization of public space as well. And we just tried to do everything we could to keep the prices of those things as low as possible to be accessible.
Great example. Any other ones? So any chance Camley is here with Friends of Lafitte Greenway, or anybody else from Friends of Lafitte Greenway? I was really intrigued by what you submitted in advance around free fitness programming. Not sure who made it on. Is anybody else offering free fitness programs? Yeah, go ahead, Grace.
Hi, everyone. My name's Grace. I work at the Capitol Riverfront Bid in Southeast DC. So yeah, free fitness programming is one of our big summer programs that we offer. Unfortunately, we had to cancel it all last year, obviously. But this year, our strategy and goal is to move all of our classes to the mornings, just based on activity in the park. Obviously, the evenings have become really popular for people coming out to picnic, take food from takeout from nearby restaurants. So we really just couldn't see ourselves offering fitness on top of that. We just thought that would be adding way too many people to the park. We're dealing with 8 acres of park space, so we have a lot less room. To add 50 people is like a lot of people in that space. So yeah, so we're hoping to keep our classes in the mornings at like 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., which is different than the after work classes we usually offer. And then we'll have everybody register through Eventbrite to hopefully limit how many people are attending the classes each day.
Yeah, Ryan?
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing some fitness programming this summer at Gateway Arch, which is a national park, but urban downtown in St. Louis. So we've got some intricacies to deal with as a national park, but all throughout last year, every Tuesday we've been doing, we used to do live yoga that was free. When it was warm, we do it in Keener Plaza next to our national park. And then when it was cold, we do it in the Arch Visitor Center before hours. We turned all of that virtual, obviously, and we've continued to do that every Tuesday since then. But one thing that we were able to do last summer and follow national park and city guidelines was a partnership with a group called The Collective that is very, very good at bringing in diverse audiences for free yoga and fitness. And so we did that last June and are going to continue to do that this summer. And again, we're able to do that safely and within the guidelines of the city. And it's been interesting with the national parks. Before the administration changed, there was no mask mandate. So you didn't, you know, they were, our national park staff was told that they could not enforce people wearing masks outside or inside their facilities. And that obviously changed with the Biden administration, so that now on all federal properties, certainly inside you have to wear a mask. Outside, when social distancing is not possible, you need to wear a mask. So we'll incorporate that obviously into our programming this year.
Camille had a great question in the chat around restrooms, which is so important on this issue. Camille, you want to jump in and ask your question? See if anybody has ideas.
Or yeah, thank you. I'm Camille Spratling with Railroad Park Foundation in Birmingham, Alabama. We're a 19-acre park in the heart of the city that sees about 500,000 people a year. And we've had to close our restrooms, which is extremely unpopular because our restrooms are tiny and they don't have HVAC. It's sort of like being outside in a garage. They're not truly indoor. And we also have a very high people experiencing homelessness population in Birmingham, and there are very few restrooms for them. And so we have a large percentage of people experiencing homelessness using our restrooms, and a large percentage of those people are experiencing serious mental health issues. And so they, pardon my frankness, but they do things like spread feces on the walls regularly. So we know that in order to open the restrooms, we need to do some things differently. We have always cleaned them at least once an hour because that's kept crime down. But we're realizing that's not going to be enough. And for example, in the women's restroom, we just have 2 restrooms. It's one women's, one men's. The women's restroom is so small that you really can't have more than 2 people in there at any one time and still have people technically social distancing. So I would really be grateful for any, and in the meantime, our funding has been cut. So us being able to like pay for an attendant is, you know, been put into, well, it's just not possible right now. We're arguing for more funding from the stimulus bill, but we'll see how that goes. But yes, any suggestions would be most appreciated. Thanks.
Anybody have any thoughts on that topic?
Camille, do you have any sort of park enforcement staff?
We do. We have park rangers on site at the park. Most of them are men, so that'd be a little bit tricky for the women's restroom.
One of the things that we have been really focused on for the last year with our park enforcement is they spend a lot of their day just going around the park with masks. So, you know, and masks are obviously strongly encouraged. We can't require that people wear masks in the park, but they're strongly encouraged. And part of the role of our park enforcement is to go around the park and give out masks. And every night I get an evening report, and included in that is the number of masks that were distributed for free throughout the park. And, you know, we're up close to 100,000 masks over the last year that we've just given out. Now, again, we're an 85-acre park in Brooklyn, so our population is obviously significantly larger than some other parks. Memorial Day to Labor Day, we get about 5 million people. Yeah, but if you have rangers, could you station? One of the things that we did early in the pandemic was we kept some of our bathrooms open and some of them closed while we were figuring out exactly what best safety protocols were, and as we were learning more about the virus. And so I wonder if you could go to a model where you open a couple of bathrooms at strategically placed locations throughout the park, and you, during the heightened hours of day, you have some sort of park staff, whether it's your rangers or some other operational staff, whose role is to kind of be in that general area. And so if they see somebody going in without a mask or walking through the park generally without a mask, there's an opportunity to offer them a free face mask.
Oh, that's great. Great. And maybe we could partner with a local company who would donate the face masks.
Yeah.
We also, we got porta potties. We closed our bath, especially when numbers got really high. We closed the bathrooms and provided a porta potty at each site, and that really scaled down the number of people, of course, inside the space. It made it a lot easier to clean, and we also didn't, we didn't clean the porta potties, so we made it clear that this was not a clean space, that you know, use at your own risk. We also did kind of a big like go before you go campaign. I don't know if anybody else did that, like go to the bathroom before you go to the park so that you don't have to, you know, you don't have to do that. But the porta pots came in really useful because then there was still access, but it was less work on our end.
Erica, can you just introduce yourself? Which
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. My
park
name is Erica Burry. I'm the director of a small park district in Northwest Ohio.
Okay, great, thanks. Jeff, you had your hand raised. Go ahead. Wait.
Of course. No matter how many times we're on Zoom, I always forget to unmute myself.
And introduce yourself too.
Thank you. Excuse me. Jeff Ojimic, Friends of Waterfront Seattle. So we just opened up the first piece of the new waterfront park. It's part of the Highline Network, and it's just Pier 62 right now. And I have been living every day on implementing bathrooms. So we haven't implemented them, but they will be live on Monday, Tuesday, and really been trying to pay a lot of attention to forecasting some anticipated issues, especially with our unsheltered population and those community members. And here's the guidance I can potentially give, and then maybe on the next call, I'll let you know how it goes. We're implementing 4 honey buckets. So 3 regular, 1 ADA. They are serviced daily with cleaning. And then we have a on-site 24/7 private security team, which is just known as our safety team. And we're working also with our good partners, the Downtown Seattle Association, to have some ambassadors on site. And we'll be conducting hourly checks. So we have the personnel to at least open up and see if it's sanitary inside, see if there's issues, see if there's hazards like feces, blood, needles, and then to temporarily close those specific units. And working with Honey Bucket and their regional rep, we've set up an on-call number as well. So if there is an emergent, like let's say someone smears, closes all 4 units because of some behavior, on call, it's a temporary closure. We can get someone down there and address it. So we're forecasting that. We're also working very closely with our city partners, soon with Seattle Police Department and our social service outreach workers. So if someone locks themselves inside, I'm sure this has happened to most people on this call, and lock themselves inside and is either uncooperative or worse, unresponsive, what can we do? So we're getting ahead of this before we encounter it and knowing where the legality is and that we have the tools to quickly address this. But the thing is that we're not lifting this alone. We're working with our partners to have more eyes on it, to record it and to flag it. So maybe we have more park rangers down there, an extra SPD patrol, or we work very closely with our outreach to help those individuals get into programs for their mental health or whatever it might be. So it's a collaboration there. But Monday, Tuesday is the big day. So a lot of prep going in there. I don't know if that's helpful, but it's helpful. A lot of time and energy.
Yeah, and good luck.
Yeah, good luck, Jeff. Best laid plans. So we can probably talk about bathrooms all day, but I'm going to shift. As popular as that topic is, there were a lot of questions that came in advance around inclusive programming and kind of culturally relevant programming this spring, and how people are not just thinking about their programming, but thinking about community outreach to ensure kind of, diverse participation in those programs. And then there were also just some questions around, let's see. Oh yeah, how people stayed connected with their communities, particularly kind of historically marginalized communities throughout the pandemic. So that's a lot of topics in one, but kind of around inclusive programming and outreach and engagement with communities. Does anybody have any plans coming up this spring that they'd be willing to share, or what they've done in recent months?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Sean Terry. I'm with the Trust for Public Land. I manage our Parks for People program in our Ohio office based out of Cleveland. We had a really ambitious community engagement plan designed around target communities where we work pretty closely with the city, and our goal really is to conserve land and create parks for residents. So the areas that we have in mind are, one, communities that are in need of park access, and our strategy around engaging those communities, many of which are underserved and ethnically diverse, really was originally designed around active like play using a partner organization called Recess Cleveland. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do a lot of that, so we shifted to more of a virtual strategy using a virtual activity book, which I think resonated here in Cleveland, but as well as in other cities. We were fortunate that we have a great artist in Ohio who's done a lot of this work around creating resources to elicit community feedback. And the name they go by the name of Art by Love. So we worked closely with them to create an activity book that was very much locally centered, using a lot of the community institutions and cultural aspects that resonate in the community to kind of replicate content in the activity book. I feel like it was a great start. What I am focused on this year is really bridging the gap between the two organizations. We have great partnership with both Art by Love and Recess Cleveland, and we like to maybe see some overlap opportunities where we can combine both the activity book and some of these pop-up play events. We were fortunate to be able to, in the fall, the late fall and early winter, we were able to actually do some in-person once the COVID protocols kind of diminished a bit here in Cleveland. So we were able to do some safe, socially distanced events where we incorporated the activity book, and the kids were just drawn to them. So hoping to do a little bit more of that. Recommendation for folks who are thinking about similar resources, less is more. I think our first iteration was a little bit too ambitious. We had about 16 pages. It just was too much to digest, too high level for kids, especially younger audiences. Second iterations, we reduced that quite a bit and made it a little bit more digestible. And even considering like working with partners like the local school district, rec centers to be able to introduce that type of content through their standard programming, I think is another way to maybe broaden the reach.
Great. Yeah, great example, Sean. Thank you. Anybody else have examples to share on this?
Hi, I'll share. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Cordes Chan. I'm the executive director of Friends of the Rail Park based in Philadelphia. We're a vision for a 3.1 linear park and 3.1 mile linear park and pathway, pardon me. And a quarter mile of our park has actually been built. I'm going to pick up on Sean's theme of kind of less is more, a program that we piloted in the fall and will be reintroducing in the spring. Is called Elder Hour. And it's basically, again, this idea of less is more. We, much in the way that several grocery stores have kind of limited hours for senior citizens, we are doing set aside hours on our park to welcome seniors in our community onto the park. Everyone is still welcome, but we're really going out of our way to welcome our kind of 65 and plus crowd. And so we offer snacks, we have extra PPE, we make sure that people are socially distancing. But the way that we're kind of doing our community engagement and outreach is to market to not only the elders in our community, but also their caregivers. And we found that that's been like a really effective way to get seniors out and onto the park. Everything that we do is also translated. We work very closely with Chinatown, and that's kind of our target demographic is Chinese seniors. So that's been super helpful. But just wanted to throw that out there as kind of a fun opportunity for other parks and people who are maybe thinking about kind of the youth and the elders in their community. So thanks.
That's great, Rebecca. We don't hear often enough about programming targeted towards seniors, and especially that type of programming. It's great. Any other good examples people would like to share? Yeah, Erica?
So at the beginning of the pandemic, I was stuck at home with my 5-year-old and required to entertain her, she was not in school yet. So it was fortunate that it was warm and we could spend a lot of time outside, and I'm a naturalist by trade. So we go out, do all that stuff anyway. So once we kind of got through that period and were able to figure out some childcare for her, we came up with the idea to do short videos that hosted her and I actually, and talked about all the things that we did, and with like 3 really easy take it home activities, do at home activities based on some of the nature activities we were doing, all of them, which, many of which involved toilet paper rolls because we all had so many. And then we kind of evolved that into some take home kits. So once people were out and about, we could put together kits for people to come grab that would then relate to the videos that we posted. So that was something that we that was really well accepted in our park district. And also we haven't done as many videos because once I went back to work, it was harder to get those done. But the take home kits have been super, super popular and not tremendously expensive. We're spending like $5 a kid on those kits, and we haven't really worked on any sponsorships for them, but I think that would be really easy to do.
Great. Good example. So speaking of kids, there is a great question in the chat about summer camps and how many of you are running summer camps and what kinds of changes are you thinking of making to them this summer? I'm sure right now is when you're thinking about those. So anybody want to jump in on plans for summer camps? And I can't see everybody. So if you can't raise your hand in the raise your hand box, you can also just jump in.
I'm from Indy Parks and Recreation. My name is Joanne Pope, and we did summer camps last year. We had about maybe 11 camps that we ran. This year, we're going to be up to 15. We learned a lot from last summer, and most of the procedures that we started last summer, we will still be implementing this summer. And so some of them we are going to be doing, we're still going to be requiring masks for staff and campers, at least at this time. We did curbside pickup and drop off, which was a new thing for us. So we did that. And then when they did the curbside pickup, we had kind of a little checklist where they asked a series of questions. Do you have a temperature? Have you been sick in the last couple days? Those types of things. And then we also did a special COVID waiver that, there was a risk about coming to camp and, you could catch COVID or, bring it home or whatever. So we had those things. And then we did a lot of cleaning. And then we kind of, some of the camps did things like we had children at one per table. We had other children that we had marked off floor with floor tape that they stayed in that particular area, like when they were eating lunch or listening to a story or a program, an activity. And then we tried to do as much outside as possible. So, but there were, of course, really hot days and rainy days and those sort of things. This year, one thing that we're doing new, or two new things, we are going to allow our campers to go swimming. And we are also going to be attending field trips.
And how are you getting the kids on the field trips? How are you transporting them?
We are using a school bus. So the company that we have our contract with, I've been speaking with him and then our risk manager here with the city of Indianapolis, just to see kind of how we're going to do it. So we are going to kind of, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but we are going to have a system to get them on the bus and a system to get them off. And the bus company has given me some ideas of what other school districts are doing, because in the non-summer months, they drive for a lot of charter schools and those types of groups. So we are allowing one per seat unless they're in the same household, and everybody faces forward. We're starting to load from the rear of the bus to the front of the bus. They will exit from the front of the bus to the rear of the bus. And then hand sanitizing on and hand sanitizing off. And then we're going to be, I think we're going to try to open every other window so we could keep the cross ventilation.
Any other examples of summer camp, summer activities? Somebody else also asked about water play areas and whether or not those are open.
I'll jump in. We've got two water situations. One, well, first of all, we don't have any sanctioned play in the water areas in Forest Park right now. We will soon. But some of our water features people play in anyway. We have a fountain and a waterfall that cascades down a hill. It's been a really popular spot over the years. People aren't supposed to be in it, but they are. So we just didn't turn it on last year, and it's not going to be on this year for a while either, because it's a nuisance that we don't want people to gather. And that was the Parks Department decision. And we we support that, and people found other things to do in the space, such as yoga classes. The concrete's on a grid system, so people stood in between the on the joints of the concrete, and so they'd be spaced out for yoga. So enterprising people. But the other thing that we have that's coming online very soon is our nature playscape. It's a 17-acre site that's prairie and young forest, and nestled in there 9 different ecologically different play areas. We have a rock swale, natural swale, and now it's this kind of a rock scramble that you can scramble up and down. Kids can pump water, and then if it's raining, it's the natural drainage swale, so it will have water in it. We are planning on having that open. The playscape will be open late spring, date not quite set yet. But we walked through it with the health department, and we talked about, does this feel safe? Should we close this off? They were fine with it because it's a small, it's not like a splash pad or something that there's going to be tons of kids in. They just suggested we have some extra things in the area, such as hand washing stations or hand sanitizer. And so we'll do that, and we'll see what happens.
Great. I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this name correctly, but Pains, you had put in something about expanding your programs this summer. Do you want to jump in on that?
Yes, we very similar to what Andy did last year. We had a kind of a limited approach while we were learning how to do it, so that both our staff and the families felt safe. But I think we only did 6 weeks out of our normal 10. But this year we're advertising and anticipate offering a much broader portfolio, following some of the same work we did last year. We may loosen a little bit of that based on what we've learned. The other piece kind of nested with camps is our summer pool program. So we had our summer pools were open last year. Actually, it was some of the few that were open, but you had to pre-register your family for a 2 to 4 hour block, and that's how we managed the interaction in our deck space. And you had to pass a wellness check, the temperature screening, before you could get into our pools. So we've been doing that everywhere. Even if before you ride one of our carousels or train, you still have to take that wellness check before. The lines are a little long, but it is that's kind of the process we're using to manage that.
Great. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thanks everybody so much for participating. And it's just great to hear everybody kind of sharing stories and strategies. We'll be planning another peer-to-peer. We don't have the date for it yet, probably in April and May. We'll get back to you. We'll be posting it on our newsletter, which you all should be receiving. I just wanted to close by just giving you a quick update on our final, what programming's coming up immediately. So we have an April webinar that's on parks as catalysts for inclusive economic and community development. So stay tuned for that. We'll have a date for that soon, probably late April. And then of course, we've got the summer series coming up June 14th to 25th. The way it's designed is there's 1 or 2 activities per day. And there's interactive sessions, innovation rounds, virtual mobile workshops where people will be on live with the tour guides, and a variety of ways of interacting and engaging. So stay tuned for that. And then we also have the Equitable Park Funding Hub if you haven't checked that out. After this call, Karen's going to be sending everyone who registered a recording of today's call, as well as links to additional resources on the topic in our Park Exchange Resource Library. And we'll also be sending a list of all participants to all of you with your contact information, so you can connect directly with each other more easily. I'd like to again thank the Knight Foundation for their support. They're sponsoring our peer-to-peer series this year, so thank you. And thanks to all of you for participating today, and we hope to see you at a future City Parks Alliance event. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Lesley.
All right.
Thanks, Eric.